Have you ever heard a story that leaves you inspired and filled with hope? Today, I'm about to tell you a story that will do just that. A tale of bravery, faith, and divine intervention. This is the story of Esther, a young woman whose courage and trust in God saved her people from annihilation. Stop scrolling. You don't want to miss this. Our story begins in the ancient Persian Empire. The ruler, King Xerxes, was the most powerful man in the world at that time, commanding a vast empire from India to Ethiopia. We open at a moment of celebration. The king had invited nobles and generals to a grand banquet that lasted for 180 days. Yes, you heard that right. 180 days to show off his wealth and dominance. During this festival, one event took a turn that no one expected. The queen, Vashti, refused to present herself to the king and his guests when he commanded. Furious at what he saw as an act of defiance, the king banished Vashti from her position. This decision left the king without a queen, and his advisors suggested a beauty contest to find the most exceptional woman in the land. Enter Esther. A young Jewish girl like you and me, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in faith. She lived under the care of her cousin Mordecai. Her parents had passed away, leaving her orphaned. Mordecai loved and cared for her as if she were his own daughter. The one thing they kept secret was her identity. Esther was Jewish, and during those times, that could be dangerous information. Remember this, her identity will play a vital role later on. So, through an incredible series of events, Esther entered the contest and won the king's favor. Let's pause for a moment. Could you imagine? An orphan girl suddenly elevated to one of the most powerful positions in the empire. But hold that thought because the story only gets better. Now, there was a man named Haman in the court of King Xerxes. He was ambitious and power-hungry, and the king had elevated him to a position where everyone was commanded to bow before him. Haman loved this, loved the power, the adulation. But there was one man who refused to bow, Mordecai. Mordecai's faith in God would not allow him to bow to anyone but the Lord Almighty. Haman's rage knew no bounds. He devised a plan, not just to kill Mordecai, but to annihilate all the Jews in the empire. To make matters worse, he convinced King Xerxes to issue a decree permitting the massacre. The king was unaware of Esther's heritage, and Haman thought his perfect plan was unstoppable. Terrifying, isn't it? Imagine an entire group of people facing destruction, powerless under an unjust decree. But hold on, the story takes a turn. Mordecai got wind of Haman's plot and immediately reached out to Esther. He told her, "Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Powerful words. Imagine the weight on Esther's shoulders. To go before the king uninvited could mean death, even as queen. The law was strict. Anyone who approached the king without being summoned could be executed unless the king extended his gold scepter. But Esther didn't shy away. She declared her trust in God and said, "If I perish, I perish." To prepare for this monumental task, Esther called for all Jews to fast and pray for 3 days. The air was heavy with urgency as people pleaded with God to intervene. After the fast, Esther dressed in her royal robes and approached the king. Tension filled the room as everyone watched to see what would happen. Would the king extend his scepter, or would Esther meet her end right there? Mercifully, King Xerxes extended his scepter, inviting Esther to speak. What courage it must have taken to face such danger. Instead of immediately revealing her request, Esther invited the king and Haman to a banquet. During this meal, she invited them to yet another dinner, skillfully building suspense and ensuring she had both their attention. Now, let's talk about irony. The very night before the second banquet, King Xerxes couldn't sleep. Coincidence? I think not. He ordered the royal chronicles to be read to him and discovered that Mordecai had once saved his life by exposing a plot to assassinate him. The king, not knowing Mordecai was Jewish, decided to honor him the next day. Here's the twist. Haman arrived early the next morning, planning to ask the king's permission to execute Mordecai. Instead, the king instructed Haman to lead a public procession honoring Mordecai. Can you imagine Haman's humiliation? The man he hated most was being celebrated, and he could do nothing about it. Later that evening came Esther's second banquet. During this meal, she finally made her request. With wisdom and courage, she said, "If I have found favor with you, my king, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. This is my petition, and spare my people, this is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." The king was shocked. "Who is he? Who dares to do such a thing?" he demanded. Esther revealed, "An adversary and enemy, this vile Haman." Imagine Haman's face at that moment. The king stormed out in rage, and when he returned, he found Haman pleading for his life. In a dramatic turn of events, the very gallows Haman had built for Mordecai were used for his own execution. Talk about poetic justice. But the story doesn't end there. The king issued a new decree allowing the Jews to defend themselves, and when the appointed day came, the Jews triumphed over their enemies. Esther's bravery had not only saved her people, but had also turned what was meant for evil into good. So, what does this story teach us today? First, God places us in unique positions for a reason. Esther was where she was for such a time as this. Second, faith and courage go hand in hand. Though Esther risked her life, she trusted that God's plan was greater than her fear. And third, divine intervention often comes when we step out in obedience. Esther's story is a powerful reminder that God is always at work, even when the odds seem stacked against us. So, I'll leave you with this. What role has God placed you in? Perhaps you, like Esther, have been positioned for such a time as this. It's a question worth pondering. Until next time, let Esther's courage and faith inspire how you live today. And don't forget to share this story. You never know who might need to hear it. Hatched Bible, Jesus, #God, Jews, Christian/Christianity, faith. Ensure the expanded voiceover is even more entertaining, but that it maintains the same style, tone, and key points as the original.